fundamental promise of the NHS that it will be there for us when we need it has been broken. Broken by a decade of underinvestment, by a disastrous top-down reorganisation by the Tories, and by ditching the reforms made by the last Labour government. All of this meant that when the pandemic hit, our NHS was on its knees and hit harder than any other comparable healthcare system. It's not just that the Tories didn't fix the roof while the sun was shining. They doused the house in petrol, left the gas on, and COVID just lit the match. That's why millions are stuck on waiting lists. That's why ambulances don't arrive on time. That's why you can't see your GP. Never forgive, never forget, never let the Tories do it again. Look, I know the doctor's diagnosis can sometimes be hard to hear. But if you don't have an accurate diagnosis, you won't provide the correct prescription. And when you put protecting the reputation of the NHS above protecting patients, you're not helping the NHS, you're killing it with kindness. So I say respectfully, but unequivocally, I won't back down. The NHS is broken, but it's not beaten, and together we will turn it around. And make no mistake, the Tories had a plan for the NHS. Mismanaged decline. A status quo so poor, people are forced to raid their savings to go private. A crisis so bad that 7 in 10 people now expect charges for NHS care to be introduced. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Over my dead body, we will always defend our NHS as a public service, free at the point of use, so that whenever you fall ill, you never have to worry about the bill. The conference, we can only deliver recovery through reform. Without action on prevention, the NHS will be overwhelmed. Without reform to services, we'll end up putting in more cash for poorer results. That's the choice, reform or die, and we choose reform. Since the general election, we've hit the ground running. We inherited the farce of newly qualified GPs facing unemployment. Patients can't get a GP appointment while GPs couldn't get a job. We cut red tape, found the funding, and we'll have 1,000 more GPs treating patients. That's the difference a Labour government makes. We're banning junk food ads targeted at children. The first step towards making our country's children the healthiest generation that has ever lived. That's the difference a Labour government makes. Strikes have crippled the NHS, cost taxpayers billions, and saw 1.5 million appointments cancelled. Do you know, my predecessor, her ministers, the previous Conservative Health Secretary, hadn't even bothered to meet the junior doctors since March. I called them on day one, met them in week one, and in just 3 weeks, we negotiated a deal to end the strikes. That's the difference a Labour government makes. ending the junior doctors' strikes and building a new relationship with resident doctors was central to our commitment to deliver 40,000 more appointments a week. But as well as getting staff back to work, we need to get them working at the top of their game. We're sending crack teams of top clinicians to hospitals across the country to roll out reforms developed by surgeons to treat more patients and cut waiting lists. And I can announce today that the first 20 hospitals targeted by these teams will be in areas with the highest numbers of people off work sick, because our reforms are not only focused on delivering our health mission, but also moving the dial on our growth mission too. We will take the best of the NHS to the rest of the NHS, get sick Brits back to health and back to work. That's the difference a Labour government makes. But conference, we can't fix the crisis in our NHS without fixing the crisis in social care. And we can't fix social care without the people who work in it. I loved what Keir said yesterday about his sister, a care worker, about his determination to make sure that when she walks into a room and tells people what she does for a living, that she receives the same respect as the Prime Minister. So let me tell you, as the Secretary of State for Social Care, I won't let Keir down, his sister down, or fail more than 1 million care professionals just like her. Angela and I will deliver a new deal for care professionals, a fair pay agreement to improve pay and conditions and give staff the status and respect they deserve. Our first step towards building a national care service. Thank you. Thank you. Every day in this job, I see the scale of the challenge. But I also see something else, the potential of our NHS. The Tories' biggest betrayal wasn't that they left the NHS unable to care for us today, it's that they left it totally unprepared for tomorrow. Advances in genomics and data mean the healthcare of the future will be more predictive, more preventative, and more personalised than ever before. Detecting from birth a child's risk of disease so we can act to keep them well. Spotting cancer earlier, saving countless lives, treating patients with targeted medicines. To make these advances a reality for the many, not just the few, we need following things: a universal health service, free at the point of need, able to share data, partner with innovators, and adopt new technologies at scale. Such a service would be unique in the whole world. Conference, the good news is that service already exists. It's called the National Health Service. And our job is not just to get the NHS back on its feet, we must make it fit for the future. And that is what our 10-year plan for health will achieve. Conference, if we get this right, we will end two-tier healthcare in our country for good, so that the preventative care, precision medicine, personalised treatment are no longer just for the few, but are enjoyed by the many. That fairer future is possible, but only if we act today. An NHS running on fax machines can't seize these opportunities, but a reformed NHS can. From analogue to digital, from hospital to community, from sickness to prevention, Reform isn't just possible, it is happening. From AI detecting skin cancer and cutting waiting times, to weight loss jabs, slashing the risk of heart attacks for diabetes patients. But conference, to seize that potential, we have to reform the NHS to make it fairer. When the wealthy receive a diagnosis, they already know the best surgeons and can push to get the best care. But working people can't. If the wealthy are told to wait months for treatment, they can shop around. But working people can't. And if they pay top dollar, the wealthy can be treated with cutting-edge equipment and technology. But working people can't. Our 10-year plan will give all patients, rich and poor alike, the same information, the same choice, the same control. Now, I know there are some on the left who cringe at this, who view choice as somehow akin to marketisation. But our party has always believed that power should be in the hands of the many, not the few. That public services exist to serve the interests of the pupil, the passenger, the patient above all else. That world-class services shouldn't just be the preserve of the wealthy. So starting in the most disadvantaged areas, we will ensure patients' right to choose where they are treated, and we will build up local health services so it's a genuine choice. And where there's capacity in the private sector, patients should be able to choose to go there too, free at the point of use, paid for by the NHS. Because working people deserve to be treated on time just as much as the wealthy. And conference, when we look around our country today, it's easy to be pessimistic. But the public have turned to us to give them hope. So here it is. We are in the foothills of a decade of national renewal, 10 years in which our country and our health and care services will change enormously. The NHS transformed into a neighbourhood health service, a digital health service powered by cutting-edge technology, a preventative health service that helps us stay healthy and out of hospital, and a new national care service ensuring people can live dignified and fulfilling lives. That's the change that lies before us. It will take time, and it won't be easy. We will have to fight loud opposition, cynicism, and vested interests, but conference, bring it on. It's up to us. It's up to us to prove that politics can be a force for good again. So let me say to every one of you in this hall and to the millions of dedicated staff in health and social care across our country, we are the generation that will take the NHS from the worst crisis in its history to build an NHS fit for the future. We are the generation that will build a national care service worthy of the name. The NHS there for us when we need it, with world-class care for the many, not just the few. That's the change Britain voted for. That's the change we'll deliver together. And conference, that change has already begun. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. And now we move on to our motions. The first motion is Composite 11, Health Mission, moved by Ilford North CLP and seconded by Norwich South. Can I ask you both to go to the desk? Thank you. Where are they?
Hello, Jennifer Hemingway, Smethwick CLP. That wasn't what we agreed at compositing as far as movers and seconders. I'm not quite sure how that is what got printed.
I think you probably should have raised that with the CAC this morning because we don't print the documents. All I've got in front of me is what everybody else has got. Okay. So I really do need Ilford North to move and Norwich South to second.
Don't know if they both know that.
Right. Thank you for that. Shall we move to the next one? I'm going to suggest we move to the next one and then we can resolve it hopefully. Oh, right. No. Okay. Sorry about that. The next, no, that's Barbara, that's GMB. Yeah, okay, sorry. Can I ask GMB to come and move the second composite and Unison to come in second? Thank you. Thanks, Barbara.
Chair, Conference. Barbara Plant, GMB President. Moving Composite 2. Conference, our children's education depends on the work of school support staff, teaching assistants, lunchtime supervisors, site managers, learning support assistants, office staff, to name but a few. Our work is vital, particularly for children identified with special educational needs and disabilities. But we have been routinely forgotten, and our conditions are much poorer than our teaching counterparts. When I started, I was called a primary helper, reading with children, sharpening pencils, and helping to clear away resources at the end of the day. Today, we know it is a hidden profession with increasing skills levels and workload. For example, to work one-to-one with a child who has Down syndrome, I had to learn simple sign language. But while skill levels have increased, our pay hasn't. The last Labour government established the School Support Staff Negotiating Body, which I represented my union on at the time. It planned to improve training opportunities and ensure pay and conditions were driven upwards. But under the Conservative-led coalition, Michael Gove scrapped it and went on to call teaching assistants like me a mum's army. How patronising, how condescending, but how typically Tory. It makes our members feel like second-class citizens at work, forced into second, third, and even fourth jobs to make ends meet. Our support staff are already low paid, and term-time-only contracts add to this, meaning staff lost up to almost £4,000 last year. Labour is committed to reinstating the triple SMB, but to truly, yeah, that deserves a clap. But to truly make work pay in schools, it must cover staff in academies, and it must also bring outsourced school workers, such as kitchen staff and others, back in-house. Conference, 14 long years in opposition. Our members have felt it. But Labour's back in government and has a real opportunity to truly recognise the vital work that support staff do for our children, a real opportunity to set first-class pay, conditions and progression standards in our schools across the country. Let's not waste it. Conference, I move. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Morning, Conference. Good morning, Conference. Sharon Foster, Unison, seconding Composite 2 on behalf of Unison, the largest union representing school supporting staff. I'm really pleased that GMB have brought this issue to conference. In my branch, with a large membership in schools, it is something that is close to my heart and close to the heart of many thousands of Unison members. Conference, we have to remind ourselves that the school supporting staff negotiating body is not something new. In fact, under Gordon Brown's, it was introduced by the last Labour government. The campaign Create, it was led by our new General Secretary, Christina McAnee, who at the time was our chief negotiator for school staff. Sadly, it was one of the first things the coalition government acts, they hated it. And that's the difference between being in power and out of power. The Tories, in fact, abolished it twice in two separate bits of legislation. And why did they hate it? Well, we should never forget that Tories and Liberal Democrats are hostile to things like the National Joint Council, which negotiates and ensures national terms and conditions, training, career progression, and fair pay rates for school supporting staff. But we in Labour are different. That's why it was important that Labour said in the manifesto that it would value, recognise the professionalism of the entire school workforce and address the recruitment and retention challenges. The GMB motion is right to highlight the insufficient training, development and pay for frontline staff supporting pupils identified with special educational needs and disabilities. Unison also demands that school support staff are recognized for their professionalism and rewarded too with decent pay. The new triple SMB must cover all support staff, must include academic schools. We don't need two tiers in our schools. And outsourcing must end. Bringing services back in-house, it's a must. If our schools are giving our children the best start in life, then staff we can provide. Unison knows that Bridget Phillipson takes these issues seriously. We look forward to working with her and GMB. Please support.
Okay, we'll move back to the first one. And after the point of order, sorry, we are going to ask Ilford North CLP to move and Norwich South to second. There has been a little bit of a misunderstanding, but if you would like to come up and move the motion, thank you.
Gabe Milne, Ilford North CLP, and on a personal note before I start, I came to my first conference as a Jewish member in 2019 and I could not have pictured being on this stage. So thank you to everyone in this room who helped me feel able to do this. I'm really proud of where I live, and that's in the London Borough of Redbridge. And a few years ago, we almost lost our local A&E department, but thanks to work from our MPs, Wes Streeting and Jazz Athwell, it was saved and was there for me when I needed it the most. Sadly, that hospital is overstretched and it's understaffed, and despite the fact that those doctors, nurses, support staff, they're brilliant, but they're fighting against impossible odds by a Tory government who made it that way by design. Now, that waiting list that we've discussed so much now stands at 7.5 million people, and for more than 500,000 of those, that experience has gone on for more than a year. We've inherited an NHS lying flat on its back, but we've also been entrusted with the responsibility to restore it. Where the Conservatives have failed, we understand. We cannot afford to. We're today debating a plan that will deliver 40,000 extra appointments a week, 1 million, 2 million extra a year, an extra 8,500 mental health staff, thousands more doctors, nurses, new equipment and the latest technology to diagnose earlier and treat sooner. Imagine the kind of health service we could build. Picture the security and confidence you would feel walking into a GP's appointment and knowing that no matter what, you will be seen in 18 weeks. It was a reality under the last Labour government. We can do it again. And imagine the pride we would feel being able to go back to the British public at the next general election and say, you entrusted us with our most sacred national institution. We repaid your trust, we delivered and we rebuilt the NHS. So let's get to work, let's back our NHS and let's take another step towards saving it by passing this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Conference. Before I start to second this motion, I would just like to publicly thank NHS staff at York District Hospital for saving the life of my daughter during the COVID pandemic. She was in intensive care with many others, fighting for her own life while the Tories were holding parties in Downing Street. Conference, I know how valuable medical care free at the point of need is. Myself, my 2 children and my 3 grandchildren would not exist if the NHS had not been there to perform pioneering surgery on my mother in 1954 at Paphos Hospital. She was working class, had become too sick to work, and if the NHS had not been there to help her, she would have died. She got caught up in the floods along the Norfolk coast in 1953. She developed pneumonia and then TB. My parents met in hospital. My father also had TB. The NHS tried hard to save my dad's life too, but for him it was too late. His tuberculosis had spread too far, and he endured a long and painful death over a 10-year period. The reason his had spread too far was because he failed to seek medical help at an early opportunity. Early medical help is so important and can mean the difference between life or death. Today, people requiring surgery are placed on waiting lists where they can remain for months, sometimes longer. During that time, they have to endure suffering and the worsening of their condition. And I know that this is hard to bear because as a child, I witnessed my father's suffering. My father struggled so badly with his declining health that on 2 occasions he tried to commit suicide. So it's not just physical health that is at risk. Mental health services are just as bad, if not worse. We have the highest rate of suicides in this country since 1999. We are 70 years on from 1954 and the NHS should have continued to go forward, but things have gone backwards thanks to the Tories. If a Conservative government had been returned to power in July, I have no doubt the decline in the NHS would have reached a point of no return. This country has an opportunity under a Labour government to rebuild the NHS. It will need a steadfast approach, improvements in staffing, technology, equipment and research at a time when there's little money left to do anything. We only have 5 years until the next general election. There are no guarantees we will get a second term. That is why it's so important to start to deliver our manifesto pledges on the NHS straight away. People have only one life, and when you are sick, it can be no life at all. Conference, please support all those on hospital waiting lists by supporting this motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, delegates. And moving now on to the final composite in this section, composite 13, to be moved by Bexhill and Battle CLP.
Good morning, Conference. My name is Christine Bayliss and I'm moving this motion on behalf of Bexhill and Battle CLP. Conference, I serve as a Rother District Councillor with Cabinet responsibility for economic growth. One of the challenges around attracting inward investment into East Sussex is a lack of relevant skills in the local workforce. As a Labour councillor, my ambition is to ensure that the jobs we create are open to all young people in our community, those with disabilities and special needs, and those from our most disadvantaged communities. However, the report published by the Education Policy Institute in July shows that the attainment gap between disadvantaged pupils and their peers is growing. Without good qualifications, young people are often consigned to low pay and insecure employment. New opportunities will pass them by. Conference, the closure of Sure Start, the narrowing of the curriculum, the reduction in the value of the pupil premium, the funding squeeze supporting pupils with special educational needs, and the impact of a growing number of children living in poverty is clear. The attainment gap has widened for the very children and young people I came into politics to serve. What an indictment of 14 years of Tory mismanagement and incompetence. But it doesn't need to be like this. I was a civil servant in the Department of Education when Labour was last in power, and I witnessed firsthand the difference a Labour government made to the lives of children living in the most deprived communities. Excellence in cities, education action zones, London Challenge, literacy and numeracy hours, and investment in early years. This Labour government can and will do it again. So let's work to extend opportunities to all pupils to succeed and lead fulfilling lives. Invest in teachers and their training, tackle the recruitment crisis for support staff, provide specialist mental health support in schools, and make the curriculum rigorous, broad-based and relevant. Conference, please support this motion. Thank you.
Conference, can I ask you can formally second this from the floor? Can somebody formally second it for us? Yes, thank you. Okay, we now have time, and I only have time for 3 speakers. Apologies for that. So can I see all those who would like to speak in this debate? So there's someone in the green top over there. Thank you. On here, and then in the, is it turquoise? Yeah, in the top there. Thank you. And if you all go to the desk just to register.
Good morning, Conference. Jennifer Hemingway, Smethwick CLP, Labour and Cooperative Councillor for Sandwell. I'll say right now I'm going to be talking fast because I've trimmed this speech down a tad. Since its founding, the NHS has been a vital part of this party and this country, and it's a part of who we are, a piece of us, body and soul. Every person in this room will know intimately well that that body is rather poorly now. NHS staff are phenomenal. If not for their dedication and service, I believe the NHS would not have lasted through the last 14 years of neglect from a Tory government. and we have a duty to them and to ourselves to fix this. Our Labour Party was elected in July with a promise to this country, and this motion reaffirms that promise. Everyone here will have a personal story, and I considered long and hard which ones to share, whether it was about my daughters trying to get mental health diagnoses, my partner who was so long on a waiting list that he now will never be able to walk again unaided and is permanently disabled. But I want to share something a little different. You may have guessed from the way I speak that I did not grow up in the Black country. I grew up without the NHS. And in America, there's excellent care available, but not for the likes of me. Every test involved another bill, and I recall my mother having a stroke and refusing to call for help because she was afraid of what it would cost our family. I drove 45 minutes from college to get to her and drag her to hospital because I knew she was too stubborn. She survived, but there was indeed a price to pay. And not only financial, because time also has a cost. Sometimes complex situations like the one before our NHS require a differential diagnosis to get the right treatment. I have Addison's disease. That means, in effect, that my body's system for dealing with stress does not work. An irony for someone in politics, I'd say. And in America, I would have died before I had been able to afford to find the answers to get treatment. I owe my life to the NHS. This is a very emotional topic, and I will be forever grateful. There's a time and a place for everything, and right here and right now is a time for pride in what has come before and the endurance of our colleagues, righteous anger at where we have been left, and a fierce determination to fulfill our duty and go through that long battle to save our NHS, and hope, because I know that this Labour government can do it. Thank you, Conference.
Good morning, Conference. Julianne McGough, Chair of Birkenhead CLP, and there are absolutely no first-time badges here. I am speaking in support of the Health Mission motion. As a type 1 diabetic, I know only too well the importance of ongoing, free at the point of access, medical support and treatment. Additionally, when diagnosed last year with breast cancer, I benefited from an early diagnosis through routine screening and subsequent fast treatment, which means I am now cancer-free and have a positive prognosis. But Conference, not everyone will have the same experience. I am a proud volunteer for the Motor Neurone Disease Association Wirral Group. The group currently supports 35 people living with motor neurone and their families. Today, 6 people in the UK will be given the devastating news that they have MND, joining 5,000 others. However, for many, this diagnosis will be many months or years after their symptoms first emerged. When you have a life-limiting illness, getting adaptations to make your life as easy as possible is crucial. The impact this delay has on patients and their families is profound and very extensive, negatively impacting the quality of their lives. Furthermore, the few drugs available are often more effective when provided early in the disease. Currently, the only hope patients have in slowing down the cruel trajectory of this disease. With limited spare time, I could spend more of that time with my friends in the MNDA Association. They're far easier to work with than politicians. They're just a lot nicer bunch. But instead, like many of you, I deliver leaflets, knock on doors, and spend what seems to be endless hours on campaign admin. Conference, we do all that because we have a profound conviction that politics, as our Labour Prime Minister has stated, should be a force for good. A government with a plan which puts early diagnosis for all diseases at the heart of a well-funded and well-staffed NHS, providing a better future is possible for the 6 people that today will be diagnosed with motor neurone disease. And they will have a better future because Labour is in government. Conference, I urge you to support this motion, and if you have free time, we need volunteers.
Good morning, Chair, Conference. Tanya Pratswell, speaking on behalf of Unison, the country's largest health union. And speaking on behalf of nurses, porters, healthcare assistants, cleaners, medical secretaries, lab staff, IT staff, paramedics and catering staff, and many, many more staff that make up the nearly 500,000 Unison members in the NHS. Conference, these are the people that have kept the NHS going in the last 14 years and why it still exists today. We welcome the full and frank assessment of the state of the NHS that Labour has inherited, and diagnosing the scale of the problem is essential. But I can tell you now that the key to rebuilding the NHS, first and foremost, is our staff. Together with driving down the waiting list, developing new technology, investing in CT and MRI scans, these are the sorts of things we can get fully behind. But they can only be delivered by a well-rewarded, well-trained and well-motivated staff. We welcome the promise in the motion to recruit 8,500 additional mental health staff. This is a great start. However, Agenda for Change needs looking at to make sure staff are banded correctly and so they have the chance to progress in their careers, making the most of their skills. That's another Tory legacy that needs close attention. And Conference, we must remember that one of the best ways to help our NHS not just survive but thrive is to build the National Care Service based on a fair pay agreement. Conference, our health members voted Labour to rebuild the NHS. We look to Wes and our whole Labour government to give our members hope. A Labour government working with NHS staff and their unions is a winning combination. Let's go forward together, support the motion.
Good morning, Conference. I'm James Smith, a first-time delegate and a first-time speaker. So I'm here representing Crewe and Nantwich CLP, who have just elected Conor Naismith as our MP with a 16% swing from the Conservatives. I only feel for the people of Bexhill and Battle who now have to deal with our old Tory MP, our old sloppy seconds, I'd like to say. So, I'd like to speak in support of the motion about making the NHS fit for the future. So, to make the NHS fit for the future, we cannot ignore the NHS dental crisis. So, as a dentist myself, I've seen patients who have been forced to remove their own teeth. Now, for me, I don't think that's right in 2024 in Britain to accept that as the status quo, and something has to change. To make the NHS fit for the future, we need a new NHS dental contract, a prevention-based approach, and this would in turn reduce costs and improve the quality of lives for all of our citizens. The most common reason for hospital admissions in children is tooth removal under a general anaesthetic. Now, I'm sure you would agree that that is a stain on this country. We need a public health-focused approach with water fluoridation strategies, education on the wider effects of poor oral health on the body as a whole, and also it's encouraging to see plans from the government with supervised toothbrushing at schools, and if that can be started at an early age, that would be brilliant. I urge conference to support the motion, but bear in mind you cannot build an NHS fit for the future without addressing the dental crisis. We have a great opportunity here, the first time in 14 years where the ability to change things is in our hands. So let's seize that opportunity and make the NHS fit for the future. Thank you, conference.
Thank you, conference, and we'll just change the platform for the moment, but thank you. Thanks. Delegates, we are now ready for the next mission plenary, breaking down the barriers to opportunity. Conference, to introduce Bridget, please welcome onto the stage Jahida Hammond.
Thank you, conference. 27 years ago, fresh from teacher training, I started my first job as a languages teacher at my old school in Washington in the northeast of England. I arrived during the final years of the Conservative government, and money was short and the list of challenges that schools faced was long. As in all comprehensive schools, quite a number of the children faced many barriers to their learning and grew up in poverty. But we kept our aspirations for them high. As you can imagine, it's hard to remember all of my pupils from all of those years ago, but there are some I remember well. One of them was a shy girl with long plaits. And she came, like me, from a single-parent family and grew up, like me, in a council home with free school meals, no winter coat, unsure of what possibilities lay ahead or how high to aim. She didn't have it easy, but she loved learning, even joining my newly formed girls' rugby team. We were great. She absorbed everything she was taught. She excelled in her exams and in doing so won a place at Oxford University. In 2010, she was elected to Parliament and this year was made the Secretary of State for Education. She has shown that there is no ceiling on what all of our children can achieve if they are given the opportunities to thrive. In recent years, those opportunities have been too few. And the challenges that children face today are many. Challenges that didn't exist 27 years ago. Challenges that go well beyond the school gates. Challenges that teachers alone cannot fix. But with a new government comes a hope of real change. I wrote on one school report for that same shy girl with the plaits that she should take more opportunities to speak up in class. I now know that she is going to speak up, loud and clear, about a mission to give all of our children a brighter future. Conference, it is my great pleasure to introduce the Labour Secretary of State for Education, Bridget Phillipson.
Thank you, Conference. Thank you, Conference, and thank you, Zyda. I owe you so much, more than I could ever say, more than I could ever put into words. Thank you. What you and amazing teachers like you at my local state schools believed, what I believe, what Labour believes, is that the best education shouldn't just be for some of our children, but for all of our children. Not just as children, but right throughout their lives. That education is how we build a better future, not just for each of us as individuals, but for all of us together. Conference, it is the honour of my life to be before you as Labour's Secretary of State for Education and Minister for Women and Equalities in a Labour government led by Keir Starmer. And as a Labour government, we see education as so much more than what happens in the classroom. It is about children, and it is about their opportunities. Opportunity not just for some of our children, but for all of our children. A vision of education centred not simply on schools or nurseries, knowledge or skills, university or college, but on our young people, on their chance to achieve and thrive, to succeed and flourish. Conference, I spent my teenage years growing up under the previous Labour government. I saw the changes that vision brings. The classrooms rebuilt, the teachers respected, rewarded with time to drive up standards for every child. Hundreds of thousands of children lifted out of poverty. A Labour government transforming lives and life chances. And thanks to you all here today, we have a Labour government again after so many years in opposition. We all know how much it means not merely to call for change, but to make it happen. And that change is so desperately needed because Conference, my story, the story Zyda tells, the look I had, it's not enough. Life should not come down to luck. It can never be enough. That a system that's supposed to serve so many works only for a lucky few. It will never be enough for some of us to defy the odds to succeed when the promise of opportunity must belong to all of us. We have to change the odds so that success belongs to each and every child in every school and in every corner of our country. And Conference, be in no doubt, the mess the Tories left behind stacked the odds against our children even further. A threadbare childcare system asked to do more but reeling from years of being given less. Teachers leaving the classroom, not in dribs and drabs, but in their droves. School absence, stubbornly high. Attainment for children growing up in poverty, far too low. Support for children with special educational needs, for children growing up in care, left in crisis year after year. T-levels botched, apprenticeships vanishing, standards falling. Universities turned into noisy political battlegrounds, not prized for their success. Ministers who forgot that children grow up in homes and playgrounds as well as classrooms, who watch technology turn our children's world upside down, but whose answer was to turn back the clock. And of course, the defining image of that last Tory government, schools literally crumbling around the next generation, children cowering under steel props to stop the roof falling in on their heads. This is what we find after 14 years. And I know, we all know, the Tories love a one-word judgment. But today, Conference, I have two. Never again. Let those words ring out, not just in this hall and in our party, but across our country. Never again.
Focus, conference. That is the difference between our parties. We have always known that bringing up the next generation doesn't start and stop at the school gate. Conference, across education, I hear a story told time and again of staff in our nurseries and schools, in colleges and universities, going above and beyond so often, who stepped in when the services around them frayed and failed. School staff ending up as both maths teacher and mental health counsellor. College staff helping with benefits as well as BTECs. And I want to put on record my thanks, our thanks, Labour's thanks to everyone who works in education right across our country. You deserve a government that works with you to deliver the change our children need. And I'm here today to tell you that we are that government, that we will work with you and your unions, that change has already begun. In the 12 weeks we've been in government, we have begun the hard work of reform. We have already brought an end to one-word Ofsted judgments in our school once and for all. And today, the Curriculum and Assessment Review begins a national conversation to ensure that a rich and broad education, the start that every parent wants for their children, is the experience of the many, not the privilege of the few. In less than 100 days, we will end private schools' tax breaks to drive high and rising standards for the 9 in 10 children who go to our state schools. We have launched Skills England to bring the skills we need for a decade of national renewal for our communities, our businesses, our country. We will focus apprenticeships once more on our young people to set them up to succeed. And Conference, we have turned government to the work of tackling child poverty once again, because it is the purpose of our party. Above all others, it is my purpose to ensure that no child grows up in poverty in modern Britain. But this is just the beginning. You know, as I know, that if we are to build a better society for tomorrow, we must change the childhood of today. And our mission to deliver opportunity for the next generation must start with our youngest children. So much in life depends on those crucial early years, before school, when the gaps between rich and poor open up. It is my first priority. The life chances of our children and the future of our country demand nothing less. Conference, a year ago I told you from this stage that we were launching a review of early years education. Our manifesto pledged 3,000 new school-based nurseries. And today I can tell you, change begins, delivery begins, those extra places start opening next year. The first phase of our new nurseries of high-quality early education, boosting life chances for children and work choices for parents. And 2 years ago, I promised you that the next Labour government would bring breakfast clubs to every primary school. And I am so proud that breakfast clubs will start to roll out from April, with hundreds of schools set to become early adopters this school year. Change begins, delivery begins, a new era of child-centred government, building a country where children come first. Conference Labour in government, once again honouring the promises we made to the British people, putting education, putting our children once again at the heart of national life. You know as well as I do that this can only be the start, Conference. The legacy that we have inherited is bleak. The challenge is vast. The path to change will be paved with tough decisions. But my belief is simple. Our best days lie ahead of us. and the work of government is to deliver them. To bring to life, to make real for our children, our vision of the chances in life that they deserve, a vision rooted in our values, and the belief that socialism is about using the power of government to extend to all of us the freedoms that in the past a great education only gave to a lucky few. The freedom to choose your calling and your cause, the freedom to achieve and succeed, to make a living for yourself and your family. Freedom not just for security today, but to build a better tomorrow too. That ordinary hope that inspires the ambition working people have for their children, that our children have for themselves. Conference, our party has always shared that ambition, but only now do we have the power to make it a reality. And with our victory, with this Labour government, comes the chance to build on our proud history, to deliver opportunity not just for some, but for all. Let us seize the moment together and deliver the brighter future our children and our country deserve. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. And I now ask Liz Kendall, Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, to address the conference. Thank you, Liz.
Conference, 12 months ago, we gathered here in Liverpool, proud of our changed party and determined